Hi everyone, welcome to Historically Speaking, an online YouTube history channel focused on the history of various institutions and professionals, how history intersects with education and culture and the world around us. I'm Karen Yang, host of Historically Speaking. Today joining us is Dr. Cathy Gorn, who is the Executive Director of National History Day and an adjunct professor of history at the University of Maryland at College Park. Dr. Gorn joined National History Day in 1982 when the organization was very much in its beginning as a national endeavor. And she became executive director in 1995 and has really shaped National History Day to become the national competition it is today. She's also served on the White House Historical Association Board of Directors and the National Capitol Radio and Television Museum. And she's just been such an inspiration for me and has been a really big part of the National History Day experience for myself as well. Thank you, Dr. Gorn, for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your bio or anything else you'd like to add in general?
No, I think you made me sound pretty darn good. So you can be my marketing expert whenever you want.
Yeah, sounds great. I think so with that, I think we're just gonna dive straight into the questions. My first question is, what is it like running and representing a program for so many students interested in history?
Well, it's a little bit surreal at times. It's also very much inspiring. When I say surreal, it's sometimes amazing that so many students, approximately 600,000 every year, are delving into historical topics and conducting research and analyzing material. And this is done in a time in which historical truth and history education are under attack. So to see so many young people interested in the past and trying to figure out this present that we're in by looking at historical perspective with regard to their topics, it's very inspiring. We've also had decades and decades of emphasis in education on science and technology and math.
Mhm.
And much less so in the humanities in general and history in particular. So I feel that National History Day is kind of bridging the gap in the curriculum that was kind of left behind when the emphasis switched to math and science around the mid 20th century.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely like personally as someone who is I honestly all my peers in my school and I know a lot of people my age growing up are also, thinking of STEM careers, I guess, rather than thinking more humanities based. And I think that National History Day does a really great job of allowing students to kind of get some more hands-on experience with some of the skills that humanities fields will allow you to kind of utilize. And I think that by getting a lot of these early on skills, they see more of a career or more of an interest in following through with that as well.
Well, indeed, but I also think that because students are becoming a little bit more interested in history and the humanities in general, so, I think they're becoming much more well-rounded. So National History Day has never been designed to create more historians, though we're proud when we do, and history teachers or public historians. It's designed to produce very thoughtful, engaged, critical thinking American citizens. And I think that's what we do, so that if you go into a math career, if you go into a science career,
Mhm.
you have a real understanding of how to apply those ideas that you're learning in science and math, but how to apply them to society and to human beings. And I think the humanities and liberal arts help you do that. So I think that's one of the best things about National History Day.
Yeah, I agree too. I definitely think that, yeah, I think, National History Day also has seen so many students produce a lot of really great projects on these STEM fields as well. And I think that, kind of, yeah, I think the research skills and the ability to communicate with a lot of different people and have these interviews doesn't necessarily, stop or is constrained by humanities, but definitely is applicable around all sorts of different fields as well.
It is, and you have to understand the impact of science, math, technology on humankind. You have to understand how we relate to that and how it's had an impact on the course of human events and society, and that's what history teaches us to do.
Yeah, 100%. I guess like this is another question that's kind of just arose from that. I think that it's honestly really number one, super commendable that you've become executive director for almost like 30 years, honestly. And I think,
40.
oh my goodness. Oh my
This was
God.
my 40th year at National History Day.
That is super, super crazy. And I guess I think like I would love to talk more about like the history of like National History Day itself. How has like National History Day as an organization and as a competition kind of changed throughout the years, and has like what have been your thoughts with that kind of change?
Well, I think we remain true to what our founder, David Van Tassel, was trying to do in the first place. The first History Day was in 1974 in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was a way to try to improve the teaching and learning of history. And at the time, David Van Tassel kind of took his cue from the science fair, not the spelling bee where you memorize information, but where you apply information. And so helping teachers learn how to help their kids look at primary materials and analyze and interpret the information, and then produce conclusions about their topics significance in history is really an important feature, and that continues to this day. So that core has remained true. But as an organization, we've changed dramatically since then. So when I first started, we had just become a national contest in 1980, and I joined in the fall of 82. And we're pretty much still a contest, so a rule book and a theme, and here's judging and that sort of thing. But we found out fairly early on that a lot of social studies teachers did not learn history in college, but they're certified to teach it. And that's why sometimes they stick to the textbook, which is boring. And so they need information, they need resources, they need training. So over the decades that I've been involved, we've tried to do more with developing instructional materials that teachers can use in the classroom, providing resources, and doing trainings for teachers and students. I was just in Providence, Rhode Island last week with 30 teachers from around the country, and we were looking at revolutionary ideals, as we're marching our way to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence coming up in 2026. So kind of trying to take a step back and look at why we were created in the first place, and those ideals that are designed to hold us together, and how true we've been to those over the years. So again, it's kind of giving teachers a lot more to develop their classrooms and their curriculum and teach history more effectively. And that's been our biggest change, I think.
That's really cool. I think like I love how the message, the core message of just wanting to create more, critical thinkers and install a love of learning to a lot of different people has remained the same, but it's just really kind of grown and also encompassed a lot of new and different really exciting programs as well. Because definitely with, the couple of virtual years, I think something that I definitely missed a lot was, some of the in-person, events. And I think that National History Day has really created like a really nice community of just people from around the world, and who are just still super interested in history as well.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. I'm glad we've had some success there. We've tried really hard. When the pandemic first started, it was, of course, I think it was mid-March of 2020 when we all kind of shut down, and we're heading toward our contest. We had half of our regional contests were already done, had taken place in person, and now the next half had to either go virtual really, really quickly or just cancel. And we said, no, that's not an option. Almost every single other national competition canceled. in
Wow.
that year of the pandemic and said, we can't do it, especially their national contest finals. And we said, no, that's not an option. These kids have worked really hard. They're
Mhm.
prepared and ready to go. We're just going to have to figure it out.
Mhm.
And we sort of made it up along the way. I hope we did a better job in the last two virtual contests, but history is about change, right? And we
Mhm.
needed to change in the moment and make things happen. So I hope, looking back on us 50 years from now, some young National History Day student will maybe do a topic on National History Day and how we managed to create positive change in the pandemic.
That would be so cool, just doing like a National History Day project on National History Day itself. And I think that I definitely agree. I think actually like the week that everything basically shut down, the previous week was my regional competition. And I remember my mom just kind of being like, hey, should we start like thinking about this thing? And I was like, no, 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 we'll be fine. Like, I'm like super hyped to like see everyone, interact with history. And like a week later, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we had our competition ahead of that time. And I think that definitely if we do end up, going back full in person next year, I think that, we will have taken a lot of understanding and learned a lot from, the whole virtual experience as well.
Oh, absolutely. And we are determined to be in person in 2023.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, because I'm actually the president of our National History Day club at school, and I keep promising the kids that we're gonna go back in person, and everyone's like, "You always say that, but it doesn't end up happening." So hopefully, fingers crossed with that.
Well, last year at this time, we really thought we would be on site in 2022, but then Omicron hit in January, if
Hmm.
you recall, and to put on a big national event with 3,000 students, 1,000 teachers, and 10,000 well-wishers, we had to know in January, are we virtual or on site? And because of Omicron, we just thought, we don't know when this will end. We don't know what June will look like. So we're just going to have to say virtual one more year, hopefully the last, and we'll all be together next year.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. Um, Another question I had is around just like how does the competition give students the chance to really interact with history, I think, in an unconventional way or way beyond the classroom, I guess. And why do you think the study of history is particularly important right now?
Well, to your first question, I think that what National History Day does is two things that really motivates and inspires young people. And first, that's choosing the topic yourself. You get to choose whatever you want, whatever you're interested in. There's a topic out there for you. And I think when students are allowed to do that, then they take ownership of their learning process.
Mhm.
And they're more likely to see it through to the end and become really truly involved in it. So I think that's really important, and we've always stressed that. And then, of course, getting into primary materials. There's nothing like getting into an archives, and unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to do that so much. Hopefully, we'll get back. But getting into an archives and opening up that gray box and taking out those materials, those documents that somebody touched and wrote, and it's a really incredible experience. So I hope that we can get back to that as well. And then I'm sorry, I forgot your second
No
part of your.
worries, no worries. Why is the study of history so important right now?
Oh gosh. Well, we have a T-shirt that says something like "Study the past to inform the present and shape the future." And I think that's truly why history is important to study. We have seen in the last few years, and especially the last several months, some major decisions by the Supreme Court. Other events have taken place in the last several years. Black Lives Matter, the January 6th insurrection, and things like that. And we're not understanding them well enough unless we can place them into historical perspective. And so if young people study the past the way that History Day allows them to. I think that teaches us to look at anything that's current, and place it into historical perspective to be able to make better decisions moving forward. Because I think we've seen a lot of misunderstanding, lack of understanding, and misrepresentation.
Yeah.
If they are looking at the past, sometimes it's a misrepresentation of the past, and so I think it's really critical to see it for itself, and then use it to understand the present, and then move forward.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, yeah, as you said, like placing every event that we interact with in a historical context and understanding a lot of what has led certain people to do certain things or look at certain things in a certain way has a lot of answers, I guess, for a lot of the questions we need to ask ourselves in regards to how we react and how we compromise or how we interact with one another. And I think that as someone who's like, growing up in the midst of honestly like a lot of really historically significant events that I think that again in 50 years someone's going to definitely do an HD project on.
No doubt.
Yeah, I think that, like just understanding a lot of what these events can mean for the future means looking at what has led up to them, maybe even like 5, 10, 50 years beforehand. So definitely super, super important.
Absolutely. I wish I could be a fly on the wall 50 years from now to see
Yeah, just
what
like,
people are going to say. It's going to be crazy, I'm sure.
yeah, maybe hopefully I'll be judging like a entry or something on this, just like, oh
There
my
you
gosh,
go. There you go. We're running this show.
yeah, that's something that we lived through all those years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess this question is a more personal question. And I honestly like I think it's super cool that you're involved in, so many different really great organizations, including the White House Historical Association. Were you always interested in history? And I guess how can someone or what would you say to someone who would be interested in history, like what they can do to kind of create change and get other people interested in history?
Wow. Okay.
It's like a very loaded or vast question.
Let me start with the first part. What have I always been interested in history? And I hated history. At least I knew I hated classroom history. Read the boring textbook, take the multiple choice test, forget it. It's not relevant, right? I just really hated it. What I didn't realize was that I actually was interested. I was always reading biographies, and my mom and her parents immigrated to this country, and so I was always talking to them about, why did they come and what was it like and all that sort of thing. I didn't equate that kind of history with what I was dealing with in the classroom. So when I first started college as an undergraduate, I was a biology major. I was a pre-med major. And yeah, I know it surprises everyone, right? But let's just say that math had an impact on me that made me change my course of study. And I kind of floated around and ended up as an English major because I love to read, and a history minor. And I ended up as a history minor because a friend told me, there's this great professor, you got to take the class. Okay, I took the class, and it was eye-opening because he taught with passion and with stories, and he let the historical actors speak for themselves. And I discovered that indeed I really was fascinated by the past. And the more I read and the more I was interested in education as well, the more I realized that history is really, and History Day has been my calling, because I feel so strongly that understanding history is critical to good citizenship, and we need participatory citizenship like never before in this country. And I think it leads to voting, and in fact, there are studies that say that young people who study history are more likely to vote. They're more likely to participate in their communities, to volunteer. And so I feel very strongly that we need to make sure that we continue that, regardless of where we are now and where we're heading in the future. It's really important.
Yeah, that's honestly super great because I think, yeah, I think first of all, pre-med sounds very, very, very hard.
Yeah,
Not saying that
especially
like,
calculus.
yes, I agree. Oh my
That was
goodness.
that.
Yeah. And I think that honestly, like a lot of my friends who are interested in like public policy or honestly in, serving others, whether that be on a local or a national scale, are also immensely interested in history as well. And I think that that's just super interesting to view studying history and recording history as kind of another public service act because, yeah, that totally is as
That's
well.
it's absolutely, it's a perfect way to put it. It is the studying history is a public service. I'm gonna quote you on that. I'm gonna use that. That's very good.
Yeah. I guess like my second kind of jumbled up question was, I guess, how can someone with an interest in history, I guess, create change and get other people interested in history as well?
Well, I think, we create change by becoming involved in our communities and by voting. So understanding the past lead to that and help you understand better what's going on so we know how to vote for the future. But I also, museums, history museums, historical studies, more and more becoming interactive and looking at all facets of history, and bringing in diverse perspectives and multiple perspectives. And I think that can lead to more people being interested in history because they can see that people like them have played a role in the past. And for too long, and for a very long time, in fact, when I was in school, history was the great white male story, the presidents, the wars and the battles, and every now and then a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But in more recent years, we're bringing in many more stories about people who come from different backgrounds and bring different perspectives. And I think that's really, really important. And I think that's led to much more interest in history. And all you have to do is look at the number of people that go to, for example, the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Mhm.
It's hard to get a ticket, and they're free tickets, and it's really hard to get one unless you get something in advance. And so we're seeing a lot more about the American past being told.
Yeah.
And not at the expense of anybody else. We were hearing to some folks are saying, well, one sort of history with another sort of history. No, we're not. We're just being more inclusive. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this question kind of has to do a lot with what we were talking about in terms of, public service and seeing ourselves in history and amplifying a lot of different stories and a lot of different narratives. And I think that, being able to pursue a research project like National History Day is a really great gateway to kind of opening that. Because honestly, like all of the projects that I see on the local, state, and national scale are all so different and address so many
Mhm.
different things. And, you'll see someone of a certain, race or someone of a certain group, and they'll be doing a really great research project on, another group. And I think that's super cool just to see all of those different connections and build off of that understanding for sure.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I am always amazed at the different topics that students come up with and looking at their approach and their conclusions. And I think you're right. Many kids of one particular community often look at another particular community's history, and that is how we learn to get along. That's how we learn to understand each other. And the more we can understand each other and our past and what's brought us to this point here today, the better off we're going to be.
100%. Yeah. Um, do you have anything else you'd like to add or anything else you want to expand on before we close up, I guess?
Well, I could sit here and talk for hours and hours about National History Day. I've been around for a while. Mostly, I think I just want to end by saying how much I appreciate your interest in National History Day and your participation and that of so many students. And it's been wonderful to see where young people like you end up a decade or two later. So for example, President Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, is a History Day kid.
Oh my gosh.
Guy Fieri, the Food Network cook,
Yeah.
he was a History Day
Oh my
kid. And he
gosh.
said it was History Day that turned him around in school and made him who he is today.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool actually to see what you all accomplish and where you end up. So please, please, please keep in touch with me and let me know what you're doing and where you're going. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think actually on that note, the lady I interviewed before, whose video is just on the YouTube, she's a CNN reporter. She actually did National History Day as well, and then we bonded over that as well.
Who is that?
Nora Noose, she's like a CNN reporter based in New York, and she also majored in history, and we just like geeked out
Ah,
over National
and
History
she
Day.
did History Day?
Yeah,
Ah, that's fun.
yeah.
Yeah, they're popping up all over the place.
Yeah, it's just like, well, so many kids this year, next batch, definitely
Yeah.
going out in the world. Yeah. No, that's super, super awesome and so sweet. Thank you so much. And thank you so much again for having this really great conversation with me. I really learned a lot about, National History Day and something that has really honestly changed my life so in so many different ways, both academically and just as a person as well. Um, and to everyone watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in yet again, and I will see you in the next video.